reconstruction, not only in health areas, but in all areas to help the poverty-stricken people. And so, while they came together, now you can well imagine the Taiwanese part of the government wanted very, very much to show the Americans that we are about to choose good projects to do. And they heard about us, and so they said, oh, we'll build you a hospital. Oh, well, we were very happy. What more could we want? The mission didn't even have to, well, they did put out money, yes, for that basic 35-bed hospital. They did put out money, but this Joint Commission of Rural Reconstruction really put out a lot of money for this hospital, and only finished by the time I arrived in 1957. However, me having been chosen as the person who would now establish a nursing school, they said, well, you better study Mandarin language for 2 years, not just one, like all the other missionaries did. Okay, so I had to stay and study for 2 years, which was to my benefit, of course. Anyway, now, why wasn't the school started by these two Canadian nurses? Well, it's a rather humorous story. They made some trips to nursing schools, and they did more appointments with federal, local, provincial governments. And of course, you have to know that our provincial government was in Taichung, the federal was in Taipei, and then the local in Hualien. Well, this takes a lot of appointment arrangements. Knowing our dear Chinese friends, our Taiwanese friends, Far Eastern people, they have a different concept of time that we do. After 2 years, they received a letter and told these two nurses and Roland Brown, who had been part of visiting these various government agencies to establish nursing school, they would now study the matter.
After 2 years.
Okay, study the matter. Well, this could take some time. Anyway, one of the biggest problems was, and many of you may know or may not know, the Mennonite Church is a peace church, and always on the curriculum requirements, their criteria was military training. So, and then we had the problem of, we couldn't just make a local decision, we had to do that with our American Mission Agency. After all, this was our theology here involved. So it became a problem. And this one time when Roland Brown and these nurses were visiting one of the, I'm not sure which of the local or the provincial agency they were visiting, one of them had said in Chinese to the other fellow, man, if we were a peace church, all of Taiwan would become a peace church. We can't do that. So they just simply would not give us permission to establish a nursing school because of the peace doctrine. So anyway, however, then in 1959, when I came, then we started a school. And this school, we said, am I going to, by the way, those two nurses, one because of health reasons and the other, she had served her term, she said. She went home, back to Canada. And so the administrator of our hospital called a meeting and said, we've got to get a nursing school going. Roland Brown, in the meantime, had gone back to United States, and he was doing chest surgery as a residency. There was a lot of chest problem in Taiwan at the time. So anyway, now what to do? And Mr. Gao, the administrator of the hospital, said, well, we'll call a meeting and we decide what to do. So those of us who were there were 2 other Canadian nurses at that. One is American, one Canadian. And so we said, well, to start and again make these tours from the federal to the local to the provincial government and so forth, should we start all over again? Maybe again we'll get the answer. We'll study the matter. So I'm not sure whose idea it really was, but we chose to follow the old adage that says, commit the crime first and ask for forgiveness later. So we proceeded, and we started setting up a nursing school. 2 months prior to the school opening, which was only 2 months after I got to Hualien, Esther May Andres, another nurse, and I visited a number of nursing schools for curriculum ideas, and we got some of the ideas, but always the military was in there. Anyway, we started building up a curriculum, and by fall of that 1959, we had the first class in the classroom. We only in our 35-bed hospital had 7 nurse aides and 2 Canadian, no, 1 American, 1 Canadian nurse at that time, and I was the second Canadian nurse. So we said, we'll start with them. In fact, I think it was one of the mission doctors that said, I think we better give these girls the first chance, 15, 16-year-old girls. They had 3 months of training. And so there we were, starting a curriculum. And of course, having the records of what they had taken, we still started on what we would call a diploma course. And I had been teaching in Winnipeg for a couple of years, and so they figured that was adequate for me to get this started. And I brought along curriculum books and things like that from the nursing school in Winnipeg. And it was a very, very heavy first 4 years, because during the daytime, we would teach several of the missionary nurses. Some of the doctors, the Chinese doctors, helped a little bit. We would teach what we had prepared today, and then tonight I would go back to my office and use my textbooks that I had brought from Canada, summarize those into nursing notes, and have a translator translate them. I had to do the translation with her because she was not of a nursing background. And then we would get this written with a stylist. Do you know what a stylist is? It's like a pen, only it has a steel point. And we had a board, and there was a steel section in that board. We had stencils, wax paper stencils, and all these Chinese characters were scratched into that wax. And then we had one of these old printing machines. And about 10 o'clock every night, I would go and print that, and we'd be ready for the next day for a few hours of teaching. And this went on for the next 4 years. It was a heavy task, and many people helped me as much as they could, but they all had their own jobs to do too. So we worked very, very hard and long hours those first 4 years. But at the end of those first 4 years, we sort of had a skeleton curriculum in Chinese notes. We asked these Chinese nursing schools whether they might give us their sets of notes. And they were not sure they wanted to part with their notes. Well, you could